Hello all, welcome to the NULLCON webinar series. My name is Harshit. I'm a part of NULLCON team and your host for the day. NULLCON annual conference is a unique platform for security companies and evangelists to showcase their research and technology to the community. We have been running webinars for a while now, and this upcoming time there will be some interesting webinar sessions related to secure communication tool, smart meter security and Android malware. We have also launched our NULLCON online training, which is scheduled in the month of August 2020. So do check out more details in the chat window. Today we have with us Krishna Shashank, and he is going to present a talk on security compliance in the ICS environment. Krishna is a senior cybersecurity consultant with EY and conducting security assessment for critical industrial environments such as oil and gas, energy, manufacturing, and smart cities. Krishna is also passionate about emerging digital technologies and believes in a research-based, people-centric approach to the digital transformation of businesses. So I welcome him on behalf of all of us. And before we go ahead, few instructions for the audience. Our today's talk duration is minutes, and that you all can ask your question if you are using chat option. And I also request you to keep your mic mute during the session. Thank you again, and Krishna, I request you to start your session.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Harshit. Let me just check if you can see my screen. Do let me know if this is visible.
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay, just a moment. Just give me a second. Yeah, all good. All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. My name is Tadimeti Nagaraja Sri Krishna Shashank. Shashank for short. Don't worry, we still have enough time for the session today. The topic for today is security compliance in the ICS environment. I think over the last month, we've had a lot of interesting sessions from illustrious professionals in the industry who have covered the what aspect of OTX security and also the how aspect on a particular standard, the ISA 99 IEC 62443, on how to go about enabling security compliance in OT security. The agenda for today is to not cover the what and how, but the why. Why is it important? What is the real essence of having a security compliance program around the ICS environment or OT security in general? So at the end of this, my outcome, what would make me happy is if I could leave you rather with a set of questions rather than answers and knowledge to take away home, because this OT security journey is a long and interesting one, and I think each professional needs to figure it out for themselves. So my job is today is to, at the end of the day, leave you with a relevant set of questions to think and ponder and, progress on your OT security goals. So with that, we can get into the session. And prior to that, just a small disclaimer here. I work back with EY as Harshit introduced, but the views that we discuss over the next 30 odd minutes are purely mine, and this shouldn't be a bearing onto the organization as a whole. We are risk professionals after all, so we need to get that out of the way. So now with that, let's get into our subject for today, which is security in the OT environment. So to begin with, I think a lot of introductions have been done, but for the benefit of the people that are on call today, what is operational technology? There's a fancy term that's been thrown around quite a lot for the last 5-10 years. But in all honesty, it's just a rebranded term of the industrial control systems of your RTUs, your PLCs, SCADA, DCS. So these are automation and industrial control systems which have been in the environment for about 70-80 years. This is not a new concept. The only thing that's new today is us talking about cybersecurity in OT. And why are we talking about it now? I think over the last sessions, this was covered as well. There was this very interesting incident that happened in one of Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities. It was this famous attack called Stuxnet. It's been 10 years since that attack, but it's definitely one of the flag bearers as to why we are talking about cybersecurity in OT today. right? So when we talk about OT cybersecurity, what is paramount for our understanding is it's not just about the cybersecurity aspect. I'm sure on call today, we have a lot of folks who, are into bug bounty, capture the flag events, or probably they do VAPT from an R&D and just for regular fun. But here, what needs to be accounted for is the context of the industrial environment. Whilst you bring about your learnings, your R&D, and your understanding of the technical cybersecurity, VAPT, and all of that, we need to take a step beyond in order to understand OT security. Context is everything when we talk about OT security. Now, when we speak about this OT security context, there are certain challenges, there are certain security constraints that we come across. So as you can see on the rightmost tab of this particular slide, there are a few challenges that I've listed out. However, I would like to bring your attention to a few of these. One of the most interesting ones that I've seen is that it is a complex environment, it's a complicated environment, which has a lot of legacy systems, which has a lot of old systems. I had the fortune of doing an OT assessment in the southern part of America, and we had seen systems which are about 70, 80 years old. And these are countries that are doing like really good work. I mean, they are on the way to adopt a lot of IoT and modern technologies. They're embedding artificial intelligence, machine learning layers. Now, while such fascinating digital work is happening, we still are talking about control systems that are about 70 years, 80 years old. If not, even in the best case scenarios, we look at systems which are 10, 15 years old. Whereas when you talk about shelf life in the IT environment, it's much more rapid. Every 3 years, 4 years, you can expect a change. So this is not the case in OT, right? We're looking at longer timelines, about 20 years, 25 years. So keeping that in mind, coming out with a cybersecurity program often is challenging. Other than that, another thing that I would like to point out is the organizational context, the IT and OT cooperation. So here you see, this is not a subject that can be independently picked up either with IT professionals or automation engineers. Both of these teams need to come on the same page in order to understand what is the requirement and then proceed together as one single entity. And this is often, I know it might sound like an easy thing, but when it comes to the practical application of it, there are a lot of challenges. So today, we would be discussing some of that because it's not purely about VAPT or the technical aspect of it, but the compliance which brings through a lot of the other parameters. So moving on, like I said, context is everything when you talk about OT. So you cannot speak OT security and the differences from conventional IT security without understanding the differences in OT and IT as an environment. So to give you a brief knowledge, you can read through this, but what I would like to really share in a nutshell is OT is relatively a very closed off, protocol driven, language specific environment where, if let's say in simple terms today, you have some things called a SCADA application, which lets you monitor your constraints and take certain monitoring and control regulations and go about, your operations. But let's say another application in parallel in the IT world, take Gmail, for instance. You don't need special instructions. You don't need special learning and awareness sessions in order to get acquainted with Gmail. But if you are using a SCADA application, you definitely do. There's a lot of, it's a relatively closed off environment and the open understanding and knowledge is relatively lower. So whilst people may think this is good for security, it really is not, because while the hackers are also less privy to the knowledge on OT, so are the people who want to protect these OT environments, since these are completely cordoned off by the likes of the OEM vendors like Siemens, Schneider, and ABB, etc. So these languages are typically owned by them. These systems are typically owned by them, and they're not really public knowledge. And often when you want to protect these systems, this is another key issue that comes to the forefront. Now, we've been talking about how OT security has been a concern only over the last 10 years since Stuxnet. So what has happened here? Let's look at how these systems have evolved through the 80s to the current 2020 that we are in. If you look at IT, there was this boom of virtualization. There was this boom of extended connectivity and newer applications happening in the 1980s in the IT environment. But this has only happened in the mid to late 2000s in the OT environment, probably about 2010s, 2011s. That's when a lot of companies started thinking, why don't we virtualize our operational technology and take it outside and sort of look at these perspectives. So you can see there is a good 25-year-old gap in between 1980 and mid 2000s. So when that sort of delay is there in the OT environment, it's not like we are not going to adopt the digital components. Like right now, all of the IT is also going through all your AI, ML phase, RPA, and a lot of interesting things are happening. Even OT wants to get on that bandwagon. So effectively, what has happened is the bottleneck where you go from being a completely isolated environment with zero connectivity to IT to becoming a completely digitally aware, AI-enabled, ML-enabled, predictive maintenance sort of environment is happening in a very short period of time. So with this, what effectively is happening is we are having a haphazard sort of development on the entire environment as a whole, and sometimes security goes for a toss. So keeping that in mind, we need to approach these environments with that contextual understanding. Otherwise, going about your security testing or your VAPT without this knowledge often can backfire, right? So is this just theory, or has it happened? I'm sure you've also seen this over the last couple of sessions. There have been a lot of attacks that have happened from September 2010, which is the Stuxnet, which pretty much started everything, to actually today, I'm sorry, I think I've gotten the date wrong here, but the Acorns malware or the snake malware, which, if you just flip it over, has just come to light only last month, right? So what we have seen here is increasingly the attacks have gone from being about understanding, it's not just about getting a picture of your environment, stealing your data. That is definitely a concern in OT. But you can see increasingly attackers are moving to an even more devious path. They're going down the road of attacking SIS, safety instrumented systems, or your safety PLCs, and trying to sort of, your walls and your flames and all of these, which are a lot of critical parameters that not only affect operations, but that can actually impact the health and safety of organizations, are being increasingly targeted. Now, this is a concern, right? Right from Stuxnet, where it was more of a process understanding and then figuring out what's happening from an operational perspective. If you look at the German steel, in 2014, this attack didn't go through, fortunately, but had it gone down, hackers were able to get inside the outlet valve and they did an MITM over there, because of which the original operator loses control and there could have been a massive explosion killing off people. So you see, these are the risks that you're talking about when you speak OT. You're not talking about just loss of, financials. It's not about loss of money, loss of reputation anymore. Whilst all these risks are present, you're also talking about loss of life. You're also talking about impact to the whole environment from an HSE perspective, health and safety perspective. So these are the things you need to keep in mind. There's a very physical environment which can impact. Whilst the snake malware and all, they do come through your typical RDP ports and exploit all those vulnerabilities. But an impact will not stop only at a data loss. The impact will translate to probably somebody losing their life or losing their limb. And there's no recovery from that point, right? So as a professional, when you're talking about OT security, safety is that added layer which you need to bring into your narrative, right? So with that, what we're getting into, that layered sort of approach, I think you must have heard this thrown around a lot of times, right? People, process, technology, again and again, you've heard about it. But let's look at this and revisit this from an OT security perspective. Technology is only the tip of the iceberg. It's about 5 or 10% of OT. When you talk about technology, your technical VA, PT testing, PT, obviously, it's a little bit of a dicey area, but when you talk about VA, your network scans and all of that, it's pretty much the same. As a professional, as a cyber professional, you don't need to pick up on those skills additionally. The only thing you need to do is to understand the organizational context. Like when you do VA, you need to understand, apart from the regular traffic that you're sniffing, what sort of traffic does a PLC generate? What sort of traffic does a DCS generate? What are these Modbus protocols and Modbus traffic that's coming in your environment? What is this S7COM protocol that's coming through your traffic? So all of these things give you that organizational context. So while you go about your typical VA and your PT, you also need to build on the organizational knowledge and understand what the SCADA, HMI, PLC, and DCS and all of their network traffic is all about. So coming to process, right? So typically IT process, I think a lot of the people who are security practitioners, they're already aware, there are these different domains given out by the ISO standard. You follow that, you do your audits, you do your annual audits, your reporting and all of that. But when you talk about process security in OT, you shouldn't limit yourself only to your understanding of cybersecurity process, but you need to translate that and connect it to your operations process, which deals with a lot of processes like continuous, batch, and discrete. For example, if you're talking about an oil and gas industry, that falls under the bucket of a continuous process where massive volumes of crude are being brought in and worked upon on a daily basis. Discrete processes, for example, if you take a manufacturing client like an automobile, talking about a Tesla, so these are on demand basis. How many people want a Tesla? We're going to produce that much, right? Batch again comes in the middle, like chemical plants and petrochemicals, some of them, etc. So it is very important for you to get that engineering knowledge and embed that on top of your security knowledge in order to be a successful practitioner in the OT environment. So in addition to a typical learning and awareness that you bring about in cybersecurity, in OT you need to come and understand a role-based approach. Like, what do people in this role in the OT environment need to know? What is OT security governance? How do you need to govern an OT security program, so on and so forth. So whilst we have covered the people, process, and tech part of it, OT brings about a very important layer to all this. It's called functional safety. Like we said, we have seen hackers more and more. They are moving from typical, network sniffing and understanding your environment or selling your data on the dark web to actually taking control of your process environment. And that is very dangerous. So like we said, functional safety needs to be integral to your entire cybersecurity program. And if at all, this is a point that I personally insist on, if your cybersecurity controls are actually contradicting with safety, then safety should take precedence. Sometimes, like this is a case like I could bring out in my experience. If you install antivirus solutions on endpoints like your operator stations or engineering stations, there are often cases when regular traffic is misrepresented to be a malware. It's because these environments are not very organized like IT. So in such instances, it is compromising the safety and the integrity of the operations. When that is the case, you always need to prioritize safety and integrity in OT and then talk about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity cannot be the pure governing factor. There needs to be a lot more subjective knowledge that you need to bring into this. Now, in simple, why do we need compliance? Why do we need a management support? So I think this meme pretty much explains it. Probably I can shut up and just show you this. So that's the difference there. The guy on the left is a typical security practitioner who's going about his day, doing his VAPT and trying to fix the loopholes that are there in your system. But with the management support, you're way more efficient, you're faster, and you have a lot of support from cross-functional teams where the sole responsibility of fixing these problems are not yours. And in an IT environment, you may choose to be independent because it's a straightforward ask. But in OT, that is not the case. You need to account for the organizational and the production environment complexities that come in. So you definitely need that support. So like this guy, you're going to give up at the end and sort of your cybersecurity program might go for a toss if you don't account for this. So typically, when you come down to security compliance, what are the things that you must look at other than VAPT or your technological capabilities? You need to think about policies and procedures. Policies and procedures, of course, these are some of the words that put a lot of hackers to sleep. Ethical hackers to sleep. But these are the governing ideas that create an identity for the organization. How seriously does this organization take security? And often it is not just about cybersecurity, it's about conventional security, physical security as well. So policies and procedures with a governance umbrella where, a lot of these elements, the governing elements and the basic involvement of the management come through, they actually give you room to build a successful all-rounded cybersecurity program. And that's what, these elements are. One needs to have policies, one needs to have procedures. They need to have performance management, where they're this is where you audit your systems on a regular basis. You see how these systems are doing, how their general health is from a security standpoint, and what are the things that you must do differently. You know, how you need to rectify your approach. So all of this comes through your performance audits on your OT environment on a regular basis. And the most important aspect of all this, according to me, is people. People need to be trained. Cross-functional teams need to be built, and a lot of teams need to come together in order to get this program up and running. Independently, somebody says, I'm going to take the entire ownership, go through it. We have seen these cases in our experience, and it does not really go well or go smoothly, right? So another thing you could see: business readiness, technology enablement, organizational efficiency, service delivery. Now, whilst all of these are important, I would like to concentrate on service delivery. When I say service delivery, I am talking about supply chain management. Supply chain is a very important part of OT companies or production companies, because there are a lot of vendors that interact with these sort of companies on a daily basis. In such an environment, we often are doing everything in our power to protect our networks, to protect our other loopholes, our USB ports, and all of this. But did you imagine the very system that you have purchased, when it comes to your environment, is already compromised? There's a malware already sitting inside it. So what do you do? What sort of program do you have in order to ensure that this sort of entry point is not exploited by hackers? And this is commonly exploited in the OT environment. So keeping that in mind, it's again very imperative to have a successful service delivery and have SLAs and have sort of FAT and SAT testing going on in order to ensure that you are covering all bases of your security program. Now, this was one of the surveys that we had conducted earlier. Unfortunately, I'm not able to give you the specifics. But if you look at what is out here, most of the companies actually are looking for a talent-centric foundation for the OT program. They want people. They want talented people. They want people who understand these systems to come together, to have a cross-functional team, and then go about the OT program. All of them are aligned on that. And people want that strategic viewpoint where, if you look at point number 2, they want to be innovative. They want to incorporate a lot of digital technology, but in a strategic manner, where rather than just the technical people talking about it, they want the entire management to buy in. Then the third thing is risk focused, which says, whilst they have all these technologies, whilst they have all the people, they need to quantify the risks that they are going to encounter and how they're going to go about effectively going about this risk treatment and all of that. They need a risk-focused approach. And finally, they want an intelligent and agile, where definitely a lot of the functions which are manual can be automated to look into a more automated environment where things are, all your AI, ML, all these things can be used to automate a lot of functionality. And finally, they want resilience and scalable platforms. Now, out of these percentages that are listed out, I would like to take your attention to one thing. See, only 4% of the respondents actually are confident that they have a successful, a very strong information security program. Now that is scary, because people want to put in AI, ML, IoT, all of this, but only 4% of the respondents are actually sure that they have the requisite security controls to protect these environments. Now that is really worrying. Now, when you come down to the other number, 24% of respondents say that they have a board level representation of cybersecurity. So this honestly is a good figure, because previously cybersecurity was never a boardroom concept. But today we are increasingly seeing that it's become a boardroom concept, and there are people who are appointed to discuss this at the management level. That's an interesting sign, but still 24%, not a great number. Talking about the last figure out there, 77% of the respondents worry about poor user awareness. So here what you need to see is people are not talking about technical capabilities in terms of conducting VAPD. I believe the market has brilliant guys. All of you people are doing amazing work in terms of that. But the point here is, how do you relate your VAPD capabilities to an organizational context to deliver value in terms of how are they protecting themselves? And that brings about that context, that organizational context, production context, and all that we spoke about. So that these are the, if a security practitioner takes into account all of this. Like, if you look at leftmost thing, it says these are the things that a management looks for. A management looks for what is the business relevance, how are my profits, what are the budgetary estimates. And when you look at the center, which is the inputs that come from the technical teams, they're talking about VAPT reports, they're talking about intrusions, they're talking about their IDSs and IPSs. So these are not really compatible at the get-go. It's your job as a security practitioner to build these inputs from the cyber team and connect them in such a manner that the management understands the relevance of your work. It's your responsibility, right? So when you are actually taking these technical inputs from the cyber team, you're able to represent it properly in a unified framework and represent it in a manner that the management understands, you have the result, which is a well-rounded security program. There are a lot of interesting frameworks. I'll definitely take you through those in the next slide. There are certain regulatory standards, right? So these are some of the standards that help you do that. Like you have the NIST SP 882, a very famous standard here. Then you have the NULLCON, which is an American standard specifically for electrical grids. Then in India, we have the NCIAPC body, which is National Critical Infrastructure Protection. So this got appointed not that long ago, but it's definitely taking big strides in this area of cybersecurity. A lot of new things are going to come about, and definitely a lot is happening in the regulatory standards deployment. This is excellent nighttime reading material though, because if you pick up a copy and go and read it in 15 minutes, lights out, you're going to sleep, right? So don't take it to be a textbook where you just read all of this and just go about building your program. It needs to be a reference material. Throughout your life as a security professional, you need to revisit all of these standards time and again. Do your work, figure out, okay, what will help me learn, and then go back to the standards. Don't just read it like a textbook and say, now I know everything, I'm going to go and implement. That's not how it works. And the volume of the information here is absolutely massive. So time and again, you need to come back to these particular regulatory standards. Yeah. So broadly, I would like to tell you what are the domains that these standards cover. A lot of you might be security practitioners already, so you're acquainted with these domains. But for those of you who come from that automation background, in terms of cybersecurity, these are some of the domains that you need to look into. Access control, for example, physical access, barriers, who are the people that are allowed, not allowed. Also logical access. If you have a system in your environment, who is allowed to connect it? Do you have to have a MAC binding to let through people coming in? Do you need to, have these sort of controls, have your firewalls where you're only enabling communication between set IPs and MAC addresses? So these sort of things are fall under the bucket of access control. A lot of other domains, awareness, audit, and all that. Some of the things are about incident response. If something does go wrong, how do we actually go about managing the damage? And media protection, you use USBs in your environment. How do you protect yourself? Physical security, like I said, it's a very integrated area. So when you talk about these plant environments, they are huge geographies. These are across hundreds of acres of land. If you talk about an oil and gas, if you talk about nuclear power plant, way too big, in size. So you cannot purely talk about cybersecurity here. You need to also advise them in how to cordon off, entry points, exit points. Are there any breaches in the wall? So when you talk about cybersecurity in this area specifically, you need to be a more physically capable person, where you're going down to the site, interacting with people, right from the management down to the lowest operator who's sitting on the lowest level system possible, right? So it's not purely about just knowing your VAPT or knowing your cybersecurity or knowing your management and doing your standards and regulations. You need to understand these systems. You need to understand the processes. What is it doing? Is this a fractal distillation process where you are breaking down crude into different products? Are you talking about manufacturing a car? What are you doing? So understanding that context is what will make you a successful practitioner in this area. Now, the most important thing, what we spoke about, safety needs to be a part of your system. Whilst you go out and do these audits, you cannot talk without safety. Now, safety is something that the automation people are well aware of. Organizations have a lot of consideration for hazardous operate and the hazard and operability and all of that, the standard hazard and operability, which is Hazop, which basically organizations try to map out what sort of implications could go, what could go wrong, and if there is a failure in a certain operation, how do I affect the health and safety of an overall environment? Is it just a health and safety risk to my people? Or if, let us say, nuclear waste is sent out into a river body or a water body, so does this also affect the environment? Does it also affect people living in the nearby area? So all of these considerations are under the ambit of HSE, and they actually are accounted for in the Hazop part of it. Now, what we need to ask here, should we also talk about security in Hazop? So often, this might be the case where people from the industry, they may be reluctant to go ahead with a cybersecurity program because of lack of awareness or lack of confidence or lack of resources. There could be a lot of reasons around it. But one thing that the industry understands very well is safety. So what if you were to connect your cybersecurity and the implications of a cyber attack to the to the impact from a HSE perspective, from a health and safety perspective? Now that's something that the industry understands. So I think this is one angle that we all must also consider as cybersecurity professionals. We cannot purely talk about cybersecurity. We need to adopt safety when we come into the industrial environment. Just to give you a picture, we don't need to get into the specifics of this, but this is how a Hazop flowchart is, where you basically say that, okay, let's say I am measuring the speed of a particular machine. Let's say 300 RPM is my set limit. And I'm saying if it goes beyond 350 RPM, then this could lead to a failure here. And because of this failure, it could release some effluents, harmful effluents into the environment. So that way they are tracking the entire process and trying to figure out what is the implication of a process failure. So that way, if we connect security, just reiterating myself, I think we can build a much more comprehensive image. And this is not just for security practitioners. I think even the industry needs to consider this, because since you're already doing Hazop, how about also having security into the picture, which is a much larger and a much more comprehensive analysis of your environment. Now comes the elephant in the room, the giant, which is IoT. Now, we have spoken that OT has recently started to, take on these new projects and changes, virtualization since the early 2000s. Now we're talking about an elephant in the room, which is, it's IoT, it's a massive thing, but nobody's talking about IoT security, right? This needs to be addressed. So whilst we're already facing challenges in terms of conventional OT, people are now bringing these devices. Trust me, don't get me wrong, I love IoT. I think it really brings down the operational challenges and the constraints. But from a security standpoint, like I said, a lot of this development is haphazard. Everyone wants to get into the IoT bandwagon. Even in India, you had the whole Digital India movement just a few years ago. So a lot of companies got onto IoT saying that, we need to do this immediately. But there was no thought around cybersecurity and how to build this environment in a secure manner. And that concerns me, right? So here we need to think about how we forget just technical assessment of the IoT environment. We also need to think about, when we are talking about compliance in these industrial environments, where do we account for IoT? This is a big question. Like I said, I don't want to leave you with answers. I want to leave you with questions. So from a technical perspective, I'm sure a lot of people on call might already be aware, there are different layers to an IoT, IoT setup. There's the network component, the endpoint, application security, physical security, and all these layers have different attack surfaces. And when you are reviewing or when you're doing a security testing for this setup, you need to do a lot of coverage across these components. But when we talk about compliance, what real guidance do we have? So that is a big question mark. I know for a fact that NIST is working on an integrated framework to also add on IoT. But it's still in the making. But still, there are these massive deployments across, and that is concerning. Actually, for enthusiasts, anybody who's probably seen Mr. Robot, the series, there's one episode where they hack into an HVAC system using the IoT module for the controller. It's pretty interesting, and this is not a theoretic thing. It's very, very doable, and we have come across such systems in our experience as well. So I think hackers need to get more acquainted with the IoT devices, and also need to think about how will these devices fit in the whole compliance story, right? So with that, I would like to summarize the talk. What have we spoken about? The three golden elements, the people, process, technology, and safety. The fourth, I don't know, diamond element, I guess. So one needs to get the organizational and process context before going out with a full-on security program. You need to understand what are the people, process, and technology requirements. Now, what the other thing that brings me to is we have technical capabilities. We have a lot of skills. However, these skills are not integrated, and these skills need to come together. Like, people from different walks of life, people who get compliance, people who are good with training and awareness, people who are good with technical understandings in the automation front, people who are good with VA and PT. All of these people need to come together. That's my second takeaway. And third point is safety is paramount. Functional safety needs to be in your blood before you even walk into a production environment. You cannot talk security without functional safety. And the final point is a lot of convergence of IT and OT. So how, and IoT is a major factor for, enabling this convergence. So how are we going to, deal with that? This is the summary. Now, just before we part, I want to ask a few questions. I want to leave you with a few questions, like I said. So if we stick to traditional VAPT that we're talking about, we will soon be replaced by one of these fancy boxes, right? What is unique to us is human intelligence. We need to ensure that we evolve our careers as security professionals, where we let these tools and let these black boxes do their job. They're brilliant products. And we add a layer of human intelligence to give that overall beautiful construct of a successful cyber program. So what is the way forward? How are you as a security practitioner going to evolve your thought process? Second question, how do we integrate our technical assessment with compliance? Like I said, NIST CSF, which we spoke about as one of the standards, it gives you a beautiful, a framework where it integrates different aspects of security. But today as a practitioner, right today, when you go back to your VAPT, you're still talking about the problem mode. You're still talking about identifying problems. How are you going to make the shift from identification of problems to solving those real-time problems in the environment? That's my second question for you. And the third question, how are you going to address IoT management in the OT environment? That's something for you to think about. With that, thank you, Antriksh, Harshit, Asim, for giving me this platform. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate your time. And a special thanks to Trisha, who's my colleague, who's helped me out to build this deck. So thank you very much. Open to questions now. Thanks.
So thank you, Krishna, for this amazing informative session. I'm sure our participant must have found some important knowledge from. So you can ask your question through chat option. Krishna, you can read the chats. You might have got some question on privately.
If you don't mind.
Okay.
Yes. Just a second. Let me. Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, so we have one question from Antarish. Apart from NCIPC, are there any other government regulatory policies to follow for power and energy sectors related to information security?
Right. So one thing that we need to look into here, NCIPC is an Indian body that was formed. Specifically talking about the India context, we still have a lot of ground to cover. We're not there yet. So NCIPC also typically does not talk about power or anything. It just says critical infrastructure. But the problem here is the clear definition in India, what is defined as critical infrastructure, is still pending, right? They have identified a few sectors. As a matter of fact, banking, according to the Indian regulation forms, falls under critical infrastructure. And somebody who's following this document can also take back their experiences to the banking sector. But still, there is a lot more clarity that needs to come out from the Indian viewpoint. But specifically, if you're talking power sector, the American regulations are very stringent around, power, cybersecurity in power. And there's this document called NULLCON, which is Northern American Electrical Regulation something, and SIP is Critical Infrastructure Protection. This is a beautiful document which specifically talks about electrical power reliability. It speaks about this for the generation and the transmission end, not so much on the distribution. But this is a document that is specifically only for power. So if at all that's of interest, I think you can pick it up. But then again, it's a very stringent document, not really suited for the Indian environment because we're not there yet. You don't want to go ahead and sign up for such stringency when we are beginning our OT journey. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So let's wait if we get any question, as we have reached the time also. Okay, in the meantime, I have one question, as you have mentioned about the incident response. So any suggestions or checklists do we follow, or do you follow to perform an incident response on OT or SCADA platforms?
Right. So definitely see these, like if you look at ISO, right? ISO 27001. This is the document for the IT side of things. But when you actually talk about IEC 62443, that is specifically for industrial control environment, but it is of the family of ISO again. These are all bodies that it's one governing body, but they've made this document specific to OT aspects. So these documents, these regulatory standards talk a lot about incident response and handling. There's a huge section on it where they actually tell you how to go about, how a program should be, who are the people that need to, what are the roles and responsibilities of incident handlers, how do you assign that, and all of these. There's a lot around that. So I think that takes a lot more detail. So probably what I would suggest is go about picking up these standards and understanding them, and that'll actually that'll be the direction to take.
Okay, great. So I got one more question. How VAPT skills are useful in ICS, or it is something to be started from scratch?
Yeah. So PT, like I said, why it's a dicey area. I'll start with VA. So the purpose of VA is to, basically scan your network, figure out what are the vulnerabilities there, and then sort of extrapolate how these vulnerabilities could lead to a cyber attack, right? That's PT is where you go ahead and, exploit those vulnerabilities to see if your theory is practically plausible or not, right? So when we talk about VA in the environment, it helps us to understand and get a picture of your network traffic, and to see what sort of systems are connected to which systems and all of that. Now, I must have shown you, there was that slide where I showed you Indigi, Clarity, and all these different vendors, right, that are in the business. So pretty much what they are doing is they are using the first step of VA prior to actually giving their tool solutions. What they're doing is they are scanning those networks for you. They are picking up that traffic. They are identifying what are the vulnerabilities in that environment. That's exactly what they're doing. They're automating your VA. So the purpose of it is to look at this environment, see what sort of traffic and what sort of systems are present, and what sort of things could be exploited. That's the purpose of VA. So when you say, should we start from scratch? I'm not really sure if I get the question there. What I would say, if you're a guy who's, interested in VAPT, just keep your mind open, keep learning VA. It doesn't have to be OT VA or IT VA or something like that. It's just VA. Keep doing your VA activity, keep figuring out how to, do your VA, while simultaneously understanding what to do, what not to do in OT environment, right? Get the organizational context. So your learning needs to be in two prongs, both your typical cybersecurity VA, and also you need to go ahead and learn about the OT and industrial environments.
Okay, great. We have one more question. How much of the new generation of IoT products are being deployed in the ICS infra? Are they very common, or is very slow as of now?
So that's a broad question. I cannot answer how much, right? So it's not a quantifiable thing. But I can tell you this, for example, manufacturing sector, particularly, forget oil and gas and the continuous process people. Manufacturing sector was actually one of the slowest movers to digital. They were very, very reluctant to, change. A lot of the processes were automated and all of that. But now what has happened, suddenly, since a lot of IoT and all has come out, a lot of technologies are out there. This sector particularly is very keen on adopting, digital and getting onto the whole IoT bandwagon. So you see a lot of manufacturing clients, whether it be steel manufacturing or your automobile sectors, or you're talking about even like your biscuits, like or chemical companies. Anyone who's involved in manufacturing a product typically is going for IoT these days, and I think an IoT security practitioner can really gain a lot of benefit from understanding these environments.
Great. So yeah, we are run out of time, so we can take in this last question, and it's from a student, so it's something different. So he's asking, as an electrical engineer student, where should I start if you want to get into OT security?
So let me give you, yeah, I like this question personally because I am an outsider to cybersecurity. I have never, let me tell you honestly, I started from scratch. Like, somebody mentioned earlier, I am an electrical and electronics engineer. I've done my MSc in renewable energy. So I understand those systems, I understand your smart meters, I understand solar, I understand wind, but I didn't know anything about cybersecurity. But let me tell you, it's not that you don't know anything, you know a lot. Not a personal compliment. Just what I'm trying to say is you already have the other part of this, which is the organizational context. Like I said, one aspect is your cybersecurity skills. Another aspect is organizational context, and you need to marry these two in order to have a successful program. So in that case, you already have one part of it. You've done your electrical engineering. You understand a lot of these systems. What you could do, first of all, sessions like these, thanks to the NULLCON team, you are learning a lot of new things now. Continue doing that. Keep attending those sessions. And if you want to pick up on cyber more, there are a lot of, go to Udemy, start somewhere, they have these basic starter sessions where you can go and refer to. So it's more about, being focused on that area and trying to learn more and more, meeting more and more people. Definitely you'd get there. I'm being honest here. I was an outsider to security. I started from absolute zero. Even today, I don't think I'm a strong security professional, but I can do my job. So definitely.
Okay, so that's all for questions session. So thank you, Krishna, once again for this very informative session and for your time for this webinar session. And
thank you so much.
Thank you all the participants for your time for pushing private communication forward, engineering at Signal by Jim O'Leary on 25th July, that means tomorrow 9 p.m. So look forward to see you all there. And thank you once again for your time. Be happy, be healthy. Thank you.